So if you're looking for some help on the interior defensive line, if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, that's one of the things that we're looking at for the NFL draft. If you're not a Vikings fan, but you still think you need help to fill a void at the 3-tech position on the interior defensive line, then welcome to a draft prospect video on Jay Tufele from USC. I haven't done one of these in a while, so it might be a little rusty, but with the Vikings season all but over, other than the meaningless Detroit Lions game in Week 17, which is only going to help determine whether or not we have a higher draft pick than we do now, it's time to start taking a much harder look at the prospects coming up for the next draft. We're going to do a lot of these. There's a playlist on the channel that you can check out some of the ones we've already done. Trey Lance, Kyle Trask, Justin Fields. We'll, of course, do the big name players like Jamar Chase. There will eventually be one on Trevor Lawrence, even though that draft pick has all been but decided because Jacksonville has locked up the #1 overall selection. And we'll do a lot of second and third rounders too, some people that you may not have heard of. So there's a lot to cover between now and April, so let's get busy. So Jay Tufele, not the most excited profile that I'm going to do this year, but this is one of those ones where we're covering a player who opted out of the season, and opt-outs are going to be frustrating from a draft scouting perspective because you don't have any recent film on them and you don't have any really good recent talking points. Everything is delegated to the 2019 or 2018 seasons. There's a very little body of work, especially for undergrads or players who are declaring early. Tufele is a redshirt junior at 6'3", 305 pounds, 315 pounds, depending on what website you get your information from. And having opted out, it's going to rely a lot on, the off-season workout programs, whether or not they participate in pro days. I don't know if they're eligible to participate in this school or the university's pro days. Somebody will have to sort of spell that out in the comments, because I don't know, having already declared for the draft. I'm assuming it's still business as usual. What's the difference between declaring for the draft before the season starts or after? You could still participate in the pro day, individual workouts, and of course the NFL Combine, whether or not we can actually have that this year, pandemic pending. So Jay Tufele, defensive tackle from USC, 2018, played 11 games, 23 tackles, 14 solo, 4.5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. In 2019, 13 games played, 41 tackles, 21 solo, 5.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Production didn't exactly stay stagnant, but it didn't realistically explode either. Sort of a steady plateau that's steadily raised. And in 2020, no information because of the aforementioned opt-out. Last game he played was Iowa in the Holiday Bowl on December 27th of 2019. 3 solo tackles in that game. Trojans lost to a very strong Iowa offense, 49-24, and that was the last that we saw of Jay Tufele. So what have the scouts been saying about Jay Tufele this offseason, or this season, if you will? Well, he's Dane Brugler's #3 defensive tackle as of this month. He can play the 3 technique. I'm not sure why I put that specific thing as the #2 bullet point, but with the Minnesota Vikings being my team, we are definitely seeing a void of talent at 3-tech position, and we need to do a lot better than Jaleel Johnson and Shamar Stevens. Yes, we get Michael Pierce back next year, but I still think a guy like Tufele could fill in that void very nicely. Ranks number 40th in overall big board on Tankathon. He's the #2 defensive tackle prospect behind Christian Barmore of Alabama. Number 28 on the Draft Network's big board. Number 42 on Walter Football's big board. I don't really use Walter Football for a lot of my draft information, but I figured, what the hell, let's throw another name on the board. One of the scouting notes that I saw, or some of the scouting notes that I saw that I would like to share with other scouts and analysts who have done some work on him, just to sort of give you a feel for what people in the community are talking about Jay Tufele. Sufficient to generate pressure, explosive, powerful hands, good bull rush, and the one critique that I saw one scout say that he needs to be more consistent with his play. So bull rush is good. There was mention of a swim move that he has, but is not exactly flushed out yet. So I think what we're looking for, at least in the terms of the Vikings for defensive tackle, especially the 3-tech, is somebody that has more than just a bull rush. Because if you've watched the past few games, none of these guys that are currently on the defensive line for the Vikings can get off of their block. It's basically just push, and push some more, and not try to get around the guy. So for somebody like Jay Tufele to come in who has some experience and success in getting around players with an additional move other than just a bull rush would be a fresh, welcome breath of fresh air. If he is as explosive as he says he is, or as the scouts say he is, and sufficient to generate pressure, that's one of the things that I wanted to highlight, because in an era where you're not getting pressure on the quarterback, especially on the interior, where you're driving him out and away from the pocket, where the edge rushers can close in around the gaps, you're not going to get many quarterback sacks or pressures. The quarterback is going to step up into the pocket and find receivers downfield. So interior pass rush is so important and so critical, especially in the modern era where you have the guys on the outside that need to get to the quarterback. If they can't get to the quarterback, you're not going to be able to generate much of any sort of uncomfortable situations for a quarterback to make mistakes, because that's how you create turnovers. So if you are a fan of a team that is void of interior pass rush right now, I'd say take a look at Jay Tufele. Do I think he's a first round pick? I'm not sure. There's some other guys that we're going to be talking about, especially on the interior, that could probably usurp him as one of the more recent names that I'm seeing pop up in mock drafts. I did a 100 first round mock draft simulations for the Vikings about a couple weeks ago, and he was a name that popped up a few times, I believe 6, if I remember correctly. And his teammate Elijah Vera Tucker was another USC player on the other side of the trench that popped up once. So Jay Tufele, as far as the top defensive tackle or interior defensive lineman for the 2021 NFL draft, remains to be seen. There's a couple other names we got to get to, Christian Barmore and a few others, but this has been a profile on Jay Tufele. I wanted to cover him, get him out of the way, because opt-out players are hard to talk about. As you can see, not much to go on, and he's really one of those players that's not at the most intriguing positions, and given that team needs for a lot of places, it's definitely not the best year for interior defensive linemen, at least in my opinion. We're not going to see anybody go in the top 10, maybe not even the top 15. We'll see how workouts and the NFL Combine plays out. But that's Jay Tufele in a nutshell. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.